And I remember getting in trouble if you left the lights on in the kitchen. I don't know if anyone's experienced
I know that.
Like when you go up on a council estate and your parents are struggling to pay the bills, like the light being on in the kitchen and nobody being in there is a big offence, you know. And we're getting big trouble for that. But I remember one time I left it on, got in trouble, went back to my room, looked out my window, and I could see Canary Wharf, and all the lights are on, and everyone had gone home. And I said, wow, they must be rich. They must be rich. Like, they can leave the lights on. Yeah. So that was my dream. That was my goal, to kind of say, okay, I got to get to Canary Wharf. I used to look at the HSBC building, the Barclays building. I said, I got to be in one of those buildings. Cut a long story short, I got a job in Marks and Spencer's in Canary Wharf, 5 a.m. in the morning. So I was like, I've made it to Canary Wharf. not quite the banks, but I've made it to Canary Wharf. Got that, and then I used that experience to get a job as a cashier at Barclays. And then this is why I always tell people about value. Like, although I was a cashier, and you know, sometimes they can label you and say you're a cashier, there's personal bankers, then there's branch managers, so you're the lowest in the chain. But if you can create value, I became the most important person in that branch. Whenever I didn't go to work, the branch wouldn't hit its target. So by the time I finished my degree in accounting and finance, I became the youngest financial advisor in Barclays in the country. And the reason that's really important is that I left secondary school with 4 C's.
Wow.
So I didn't even get 5 A to C's.
Wow.
I went to college. I got CDE. I finished my degree. I got a 3rd class.
Wow.
I tell people I have failed my way to success. I want people to really understand is that if you do a test, you take that, you can fail it the first time. The second time, you do a little bit better. By the 4th or 5th time, you're like, no, I know that question.
Yeah.
Do you understand?
Yeah.
And that's how I see life. So sometimes I always tell people, don't allow, you know, society to define you, because actually we're all growing and learning. Just because you couldn't do something at 15, 16 doesn't mean you can't do something else at 21, 22, 25, 30.
Hello everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of Against Our Odds. My name is Daniel Coker, your accidental podcaster, and our guest this week is in the person of Mr. Emmanuel Asuquo. Have I pronounced that right?
Perfect.
Yeah. Emmanuel is a qualified financial advisor and TV personality. He's an author, and he's a founder of the One Stop Save.
Yeah, One Stop Save. Yeah.
Which he's going to tell us about in the course of this interview.
Yes.
Emmanuel, welcome to Against Our Odds.
No, thank you for having me, Daniel. Really appreciate it. It's great to meet you. I've seen some few other episodes that you've done. The work looks good. The quality looks good. You know, I get loads of people that ask me to go into podcasts, not to, you know, blow my own trumpet or anything like that. But, you know, for me, I always look at the energy and effort, because I know how hard it is to do this stuff, and I can tell that you're doing it at a very high level. So well done.
Yeah. Thank you very much. So just to kickstart us off, can you give our viewers a bit of a background about, just give us context, you know, because I know you were born in East London, you know, in a council estate, and you kind of navigated your way working in Marks and Spencer. So just give us a bit of a flavour.
Yeah.
Before this episode starts, I'd like to ask a big favour. Your subscription means a lot to us, because the bigger this platform gets, the bigger the guests get. So do me a favour. Please click on the subscribe button and the bell notification so that you don't miss out on any future episodes. Now let's get back to this episode.
All that.
Yeah, you know the story. I feel like sometimes you feel like you've said it so many times that everyone knows it, but every time I meet people, they're like, no, I haven't heard it before. So I grew up in East London, Tower Hamlets, on a council estate. Both my parents came from Nigeria, so I was the first in my family to be born here in the UK. I've got 2 younger sisters, and you know, as Nigerian parents, education. It was the big push, you know, the drive. The whole reason they came over here was because they felt you get a good education, you can get a good job, better opportunities than what were provided in Nigeria. Unfortunately, I was born here, so I didn't understand all that they had been through, all the struggles that they had been through. I was born here, I knew here, and so when my friends were messing about in school, I was messing about with them because we were just having a good time. I didn't really understand the gravitas of all the sacrifices that they had made. Obviously, I get it today, but at that time I didn't really grasp it. And I was very good at sport, so I was very good at athletics. I used to run 100 meters in under 11 seconds. I used to play rugby. I was on the wing. I used to play basketball as well. So I thought I was going to be a sports star. So this education thing I don't really need to take it too seriously. All my teachers, everyone thought I was going to do something in sports because I was really, really good at sports. So that was kind of my goal, my aim, my backup. But obviously, growing up on an estate, just seeing what it was like, the conditions, the stairwell. I remember us being embarrassed to invite people to our house. And when we used to invite people to our house, my mum would make us go out with buckets. We put bucket, water, fairy liquid, and we would go and wash the stairwell because it would just be full of, dirt and spit and the kind of things that you'd feel embarrassed about. So we used to wash the whole stairs from the bottom to the top, so that when the guests come, it would be clean. Those are that's the type of environment that you're living in. And so, for me, sports was going to be my way out. And then I remember one day coming home, seeing my mum. My mum has a bad leg, so she used to have a limp when she walked, and so seeing her, she had fallen on the stairs, helped her up, got her in the house, and then the next day she was smiling. And I always remember this, and I remember asking, why are you smiling? And she was just like, I'm going back to work, I get to provide for my family. And I remember telling her, your investment in me won't be wasted. I just remember thinking it and saying it and just being like, your investment's not going to be wasted in me. And so after that, I kind of looked at, okay, if the sports thing doesn't work, what else is out there? What else could I do as a backup for that? And I remember getting in trouble if you left the lights on in the kitchen. I don't know if anyone's experienced
I know that.
when you go up on a council estate and your parents are struggling to pay the bills, the light being on in the kitchen and nobody being in there is a big offence, and we're getting big trouble for that. But I remember one time I left it on, got in trouble, went back to my room, looked out my window, and I could see Canary Wharf, and all the lights are on, and everyone had gone home. And I said, wow, they must be rich. They must be rich. They can leave the lights on and go home. I can't even leave one light in my kitchen, one bulb. These 100 floors all over all these buildings, and hundreds of floors, and all the lights are on, they've gone home. So that was my dream, that was my goal, to kind of say, okay, I got to get to Canary Wharf. I used to look at the HSBC building, the Barclays building. I said, I've got to be in one of those buildings. Cut a long story short, I got a job in Marks and Spencer's in Canary Wharf, 5 a.m. in the morning. So I was like, I've made it to Canary Wharf. not quite the banks, but I've made it to Canary Wharf. Got that, and then I used that experience to get a job as a cashier at Barclays. And then this is why I always tell people about value. Although I was a cashier, sometimes they can label you and say you're a cashier. There's personal bankers, then there's branch managers. So you're the lowest in the chain. But if you can create value, I became the most important person in that branch. Whenever I didn't go to work, the branch wouldn't hit its target because I was part-time. Those days that I didn't go in, they would struggle to hit their target because I created a rapport with people. I used to read the pamphlets, and I was having a mentor, my branch manager, who was very young, so we could relate. And I was like, he was like to me, you've got a great personality. Read these pamphlets in the banking hall. What's a credit card? What's a bank account? Travel insurance, all of this type of stuff. So instead of playing Snake, I'm letting you know my age. Instead of playing Snake on my phone in the train, I used to read these brochures, and then basically because of that, I was able to build rapport. And then those times, the bank used to be packed. And people used to queue just to wait for me. You only got 1 hour in your lunch break. People would use half an hour just to be served by me because that was the level of service, that was the commitment. They didn't want to have to speak all their details to other people. They knew that I knew them inside out. I knew what they wanted. I understood their transactions, and I would get it correct for them. And so because of that, when I then said, oh, have you thought about upgrading your account? Have you thought about getting a credit? All of a sudden, they built into my rapport. They believed in me, and so it became easy for me to make recommendations. And so the bank started to hit target and so forth. So by the time I finished my degree in accounting and finance, I became the youngest financial advisor in Barclays in the country. And the reason that's really important is that I left secondary school with 4 C's.
Wow.
So I didn't even get 5 A to C's.
Wow.
I went to college. I got CDE. I finished my degree. I got a 3rd class.
Wow.
I tell people I have failed my way to success. I want people to really understand is that if you do a test, you take that, you can fail it the first time, The second time, you do a little bit better. By the fourth or fifth time, you're like, no, I know that question.
Yeah.
Do you understand?
Yeah.
And that's how I see life.
Right.
I'm not afraid to fail. I just know I've just learned a new way not to do it. And I go again. And sometimes when you do something so many times, eventually you're going to get the right answer. And so that's how I see life. And so I let people know, because at the time when I failed my GCSEs, I felt like my life was over. Then I went to college, did the same. Then I went to uni, did the same. And yet I still became the youngest financial advisor in Barclays in the country.
Wow.
Like, when I say that, that's not to boast. Again, that's to let people understand that I was 22 and my closest colleague was like 35, 37. The rest, the average age of a financial advisor is around 50. So you can imagine that everybody I was working with could have pretty much been my mum or my dad. That's the age gap between us. And we're doing the same job. And so for me, that was when I realized that, you're not defined by titles, you're not defined by your background or where you come from. If you find a way to add value and focus on the value that you can create, people will pay you for that value.
Yeah, that's quite a good point that you make there, because that's the very essence of this podcast, against all odds.
Yeah.
And you wouldn't expect somebody who has had these failures to end up coming on TV, becoming a TV personality, becoming an author, becoming a very well recognized financial advisor. I guess it just goes to show that, it's possible. It doesn't matter where you start.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter where you start. You can always pivot, and find something that you do well.
Yeah. I tell people so much, like, when you see me, like, I'm on the television and so forth, I have friends that I grew up with. The only difference between me and them is that my mum had a job in a school. She took a job as a dinner lady in a school so that she could be home by the time I finished school. Whereas my other friends, they might not have had a dad, so their mum had to do 2 jobs, or their parents had to work multiple jobs. So when they got home, there was no one at home. So they were on the street. We grew up in the same environment. But because I was in my house and they were on the street, when they were on the street, they met other people. There's no difference between me and them. Sometimes it's just life choices, just the situations that you get. The reason me getting 4 GCSEs, I went to a school where 5 people getting 5 GCSEs before our year was less than 5% of people got. So you're more likely to go to prison than you were to go to university. And so because of that, it was celebrated, the fact that I even managed to get 4. Do you know what I mean? Sometimes, so I knew that when I got my professional exams and I learned how my learning style, it wasn't that I wasn't intelligent, I just never knew how I took in information. And once I learned that, I was able to pass all my professional exams. So sometimes I always tell people, don't allow society to define you, because actually we're all growing and learning. Just because you couldn't do something at 15, 16 doesn't mean you can't do something else at 21, 22, 25, 30. And so we see it now where I've got loads of people around me who are going back to do their masters, going back to get a degree and so forth. And they're finding it easy because they've got the right processes and they understand the dedication it needs to be successful. So I always, like you said, that's why I love the podcast, against all odds. Like the odds, forget the odds. Like, bet on yourself. Do you know what I mean? Like, forget what the bookies say, forget what your parents say, forget what society says, forget about all of that. Like, bet on yourself. And that's one thing I've done time and time again. And like you said, before me, you wouldn't expect to see someone from my background with my qualifications teaching the nation. Like, I literally teach the nation about finance. I'm literally, one of the people voices when something happens in finance in the country. They call me to come on to national television to explain what these things mean. You wouldn't expect that from the background that I've been at. So that's why, I would, like I said, bet on yourself.
Good. In terms of soft skills, you just listening to you, I can see that where you probably fell short academically,
yes,
you more than compensated for it in soft skills.
Yes.
Which is not often spoken about, but outside our community, because you see somebody who's gone to certain schools,
yes,
certain grammar schools and whatever it is, and they might not necessarily be the brightest. Even some of the people who have been prime ministers of this country, simply because of the schools that they've gone to, those schools hone those soft skills.
Yes.
So you see somebody who, like I said, has gone to Eton, he's gone whatever it is, but he's probably not the smartest tool in the box.
Yes.
Right? But he's able to talk, he's able to debate, he's very confident, he's very affable,
yeah,
he's very likable. And one of the things I know you talk about is that people have to like you.
Yes.
You've got to have a likability factor. Just tell us a little bit about that.
So I always tell people my number one thing that's helped me in life is that people like me. And I don't know, I feel like it's a God-given gift. But people like me. Like I said, from being a cashier, from even I worked in Marks and Spencer's, there's just a likability factor. And it's not something that I think about or I try and put on or try and do. It's just natural. And so because people like you, they want to support you. Like I said, when I was in the bank, people would, because they like me, when I made recommendations, they would take them. Then my branch manager liked me, so he took time to mentor me and really hone my skills and support me. Even when I first started, I used to come to the branch late. I used to say I'm a cashier, I don't need to be on time, but he said, no, I like you, but you need to change X, Y, Z. And because of that likability factor, he gave me an opportunity to actually have more one-to-ones with him. And so for me, that likability factor has helped me even till today. Like my content, television. When I do television, one of the big things they say is that you're relatable. As in, viewers will, when they do opinion polls and do surveys of people that watch the shows and so forth, they'll say, yeah, that Emmanuel guy is really relatable. I relate to him, I like him, I like how he speaks, the way he thinks. And so that likability factor is really, really important, and it will help you even at times when maybe you're not the best candidate, even at times when maybe you're not, like you said, you haven't got the most qualification. Because somebody likes you, they're willing to work with you, they're willing to give you an opportunity and a chance. So I always tell people, it's your personality. Even when with my kids right now, one of my sons, he's really, really intelligent, but sometimes his characters, there's certain flaws that I don't like, and I tell him, as your father, I am personally going to judge whether I was a good father to you by your character, not by your grades. And so for me, it's, are you a good person? Are you someone that is trustworthy? Are you someone that people can rely on? Those are the qualities that I'm looking for from you more than your grades. And so for me, that's something that's really, really important.
Okay. I also know that you survived, or you went through a couple of redundancies.
Oh Lord, yes.
How did you bounce back? Because we're currently in an environment where things are very uncertain, and people are having to deal with real lived experiences of things like that. How did you keep pressing on?
The first one with the banks, that wasn't really their fault. We had the 2007 crash. Yeah. So if you're in the bank, it was something that we were all going through. So I didn't take that one too personally. I was able to just go out, find another job, do what I had to do. The second one, that was really disappointing because I wasn't expecting it. But again, it came at a time where people are looking at costs and just saying, look, last one in, first one out type thing. So that was really disappointing. The third one was the one that really hurt me, because that time my wife had just given birth to our fourth child. I'd taken 2 weeks off paternity leave, came back, and they made me redundant. So I had to do that long walk home to tell my wife, who's holding our brand new baby plus our three other children, that our salary's gone, our income is gone. And I remember at that moment, that was the moment I said, I'm not going back. The first time I understood, the second time was painful, but the third time I was like, actually, I'm not going to rely on these companies to feed my family. I have to find a way to be able to feed my family and support my family within my own means. And so I was doing social media, but I was just doing it part-time. And the redundancy money that I got was enough to say, plus my savings was enough for me to say, I don't need to go back to work for 9 months. And I said, I'm not going to go back. I'm going to focus on this business. And that was in March 2019. By August 2019, I got my first TV show with Channel 4.
Wow.
And so literally I did so much content. I did lives, I did collaborations, I went to events. I replied to every single comment. I replied to every single DM message. I did talks, I did free calls. I did talks at churches, I did talks wherever anyone would let me speak, I was there. I literally said, if I can give this much effort 9 to 5 for somebody else's company, how much energy can I put into my own? And it just changed my life, and I haven't had to work for anyone since then.
Wow. So would you say that, that mindset of not, accepting kind of your own destiny and realizing that, look, you got to figure this thing out yourself, was like a light bulb moment in your journey? Yeah,
it was a big light bulb moment, and it's. But people said, "Oh, weren't you scared?" I'm at the bottom. Like, I've come from nothing. Do you know, like, and so sometimes it can be a hindrance. You say, oh, I've not had the best education, I've not lived in the best environment, but also it can be to your benefit. Because I was listening to Dean Forbes, who was talking about it the other day, and saying that the fact that we come from these environments, we shouldn't even be competing. Like, we're sitting in rooms with people that are, you know, the best educated, they've gone to the best schools, they've had private education, and we're applying for the same jobs, and even in the end I'm getting it over you. And so it's one of those things that actually it's to your benefit sometimes, that you can reverse it and say, actually, I've come from this and I've got this far, so if I can get this far, I know I can go further. Do you know what I mean? And so it's that I'm not going to let anyone define me, because people have tried to define me my whole life. Like I said, oh, you're only good to play sports. Oh, you know, I had a bit of a lisp when I was younger, and I wasn't really confident talking. People say, how are you so quick with the videos and quick-witted? I used to get bullied. And so when you go to school knowing that you're going to get bullied, you have to come with some replies already in your head, and then you have to think on your feet. And so all of these hardships that I've been through in life have helped mold me and helped me to succeed now in life. So for me, anytime I get anything, I always say I use everything as motivation. If it's for me, I'm motivated. If you say I can do it, thank you, I'm motivated. If you say I can't do it, thank you, I'm motivated. It doesn't make everything is motivating me, no matter whether it's good or bad.
Wow. In terms of your, well, I know you also talk about generational wealth.
Yes.
You know, especially in our community. Can you maybe just tell our viewers practically, you know, how people can go about having a mindset shift, you know, to move away from this end to spend treadmill.
Yes.
You know, and actually begin to look at a longer term strategy.
Yes.
You know, I mean, even basic things like invest in the S&P 500. I mean, nothing fancy, but at least have a plan, you know, because we're not getting any younger.
Exactly.
And what you tend to find, obviously as a financial advisor, you might find that people might be getting older, getting close to retirement age, might not have, you know, pension plans in place and all that. Can you just tell us a little bit about, you know? Yeah,
I think when we talk about generational wealth, I like to try and dumb it down and make it as simple as possible. To me, when we're talking about generational wealth, what we're talking about is ownership. What do you own? And when we look at people, you know, we go to places like the West End and we love the shops, but we never think about a lot of these buildings are owned by single families. Families have owned these buildings for hundreds of years, you know. And so actually it's, what do you own? And for a lot of us, especially coming from, you know, the community I come from, we own a lot of clothes, we own a lot of we own really nice cars, we own a lot of things that the value of them go down after we bought them. And so actually I always tell people, for a lot of you're leaving Gucci belts and, you know, Louis Vuitton shoes. Like, that's what your children are going to have to sell to bury you. Like, you've lived 50, 60, 70, 80 years and there's no money to bury you in the ground, let alone to leave to your children. You're leaving them there. And it's that, changing that mindset is that, you know, if I can do for my children and really like help them to a next level, so help them with a step up, that step up for them then helps them make their children's life that a little bit easier and a little bit better. And so actually that only comes through ownership. And I always tell people 3 main things. We've got stocks, whether that's individual stocks, whether that's stocks and shares ISA, like you said, S&P 500, or that's a pension. You know, that's that investment there. Then 2, property, which we've seen, you know, especially here in the UK, something that has been tried and tested and worked for people for generations and generations. And then 3, business. Like, actually, can you own income? Can you own a business that creates income streams that even after you're gone, that will still be paying your family? We see this happen for years and years and years, where people have businesses and it pays out, and even after they've sold it, they keep a bit and it still pays their family generations down the line are still getting paid off something created a long time ago. So for me, it's about ownership. Don't think of generational wealth like, oh, why would I leave it to them? And, you know, what about my benefit? Like, I worked hard for this money. So no, yeah, you worked hard for it, so you own it. I sit down with people and they say, oh, why would I buy a house? Like, I don't need to buy a house, I'm renting. But how do we have security in things that we don't own? How do you feel safe and secure in an environment that actually a landlord can say, I want that house back at any moment, and all of a sudden your kids have to jump up, and if you can't get a house in that area, now your kids have to change school and lose all their friends. Like, why are we comfortable in these environments? Those are the questions that I like to ask us. Why are we also the ones that are making these stocks go up in value? We are the reason the share price is going up from our consumerism. Why would you not want to have ownership? You see, the system is designed, especially for people from our community, to be consumers. And again, because when you don't have, what do? You surround yourself with things that make you feel like you have. So I don't have much money. I come from a poor background. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to buy a Mercedes Benz because that's associated with wealth. I'm going to buy a nice watch, a Rolex watch. I'm going to buy a chain. I'm going to buy this bag because when I want people to look at me and feel that, oh, I'm one of the richer ones. And when I really talk about it, it goes back. That's the same mentality we had when we were picking cotton. Is that we had those that were in the house and those that were in the field. And all is different now is the ones in the field and the ones in the house, we're just buying different things. But the reality is we still have no ownership. And until we get to a place of ownership, we've seen it with the Asian community. They really focus in on property and ownership. And even here in the UK, by percentage, they own more property by percentage of the amount of them, by the percentage of them that own, to even white people. And it makes me think to myself, when I just gone on holiday, there was a Chinatown. There's nowhere you're gonna go. There's a Chinatown in. Why don't we have Nigeria Town or Ghana Town or why are we not? We have great food. We have great culture. We have why have we not branded it and put it around the world and people come and pay to be in our presence wherever it is? We're there. Everywhere I go, I see Nigerian. I'm sure if you go to the moon, there'll be a Nigerian there. But we don't have Nigeria Town. We don't have do you understand? And even when it comes to things like Nollywood, which are doing great and help people buy into our culture, what are we doing with it? How are we really making sure that benefit is coming back to us and not the few?
So when you talk about ownership, are you talking about like collaboration with others, or is an ownership mindset for an individual?
Both. So we need to have ownership as a mindset as individuals, but we also need to understand, to get true ownership, your one salary or your income, it's just not going to be enough. When you want to have true ownership, because we're not thinking big enough, we're thinking about buying a house when we should be thinking about buying a street. Do you understand? The mindset is completely different. I always tell people, they're like, oh, like I do talks at churches and there'll be 100 people, and I said, imagine if all of us put £100 a month into a fund, and then we use that fund to buy property. We could all pretty much, every 6 months, go out and put that deposit down and buy a new property. But the problem is that people say, well, I don't own this, I want to own that, and it's that individualism mindset. Whereas when I speak to, especially like, from the Indian community, they definitely want to do it together. They see more value in the fact of us owning together than not owning at all, or waiting years. And so it's that collaboration, that leverage. You go to a bank on your own, the bank are nervous. If you lose your job, how are you going to pay? You go to a bank with 10 people, they're like, well, if one of you lose your job, there's still 9 others. It's a different mindset. Like, even if the bank wants to say no, like they literally can't. You force their hand to give you the finance because you go in a group as opposed to going as an individual.
One Stop Save.
Yes.
Tell us about that.
So One Stop Save is my comparison website. When I came into doing TV and so forth, everyone used to call me the Black Martin Lewis. And I took it as pride, because Martin Lewis, what he's done for the country and what he's done in regards to finance and helping people make better financial decisions is something that inspired me. And it's something that I took on and always wanted to create my own version of what he's done, but for a different community. And so what I decided to do was start up One Stop Save, which is basically a comparison site, but it's aimed at the working class, everyday person, the working individual. And so whereas other sites might focus on mortgage rates and savings rates, we focus on, making sure that you understand how can you increase your income, look at ways that you can save money, look at deals that you can get. So if you're going to spend money, how can you spend it more wisely? And really look at taking away less text. So we find that a lot of the other comparison sites, they're very text heavy, very article driven, and I know that's mostly for Google Analytics to make sure they come up high on the search engine. But if you're someone that's a labourer and you don't read every day for your work, now to come and read this article, you a lot of the time you'll be put off. So we're doing it less text and more videos and making it more accessible to the everyday working person so they can make better decisions. I realized that as much as I can go around and be on the TV, when I'm at an event speaking, I can only be in that one space. I can't be helping everyone else, but they need that help. So I created One Stop Safe to be able to put that information out there, be a safe space that people can go that want to, take control of their money, want help and support in a trusted environment.
Okay, right. And I know you authored a book as well.
Yes.
Last year, and you have a children's finance book as well coming out later in the year, I believe it is.
Yes.
Tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, so my book last year was called Get Your Money Right. And the whole premise of Get Your Money Right is just the key foundations. I've been criticized for it, and I love criticism because it's always about improving and being better. My criticism that I get for Get Your Money Right is too simple. It's too basic. And actually, that's exactly why I did it. And so for me, I know that what seems simple to a lot of people, to a lot of the people that I'm speaking to, is advanced. They've never heard of it. And I wanted to create an easy guide for people to make their first step into, I've got money, I'm paying bills. What should I be thinking about? What should I be doing? And so that was the idea behind Get Your Money Right. And that's the feedback from people, from the majority of people, has been excellent. And then I created the Ultimate Guide to Money, which is a kids book aimed at kids 8 to 12. And with that book, I really wanted to teach people about the principles of money and finance, but also business, and teach kids about, like I said, about value. And so the premise of the book is the child the child follows the narrator, and the child gets to pick at the end of each chapter after what they've read, what option they want. They're given £1 at the beginning, and depending on the options that they pick, by the end they would have turned that £1 into £1 million. And it's just to give children that idea of, actually, I can create money. I don't just have to. Money's not just something that I get to spend. Actually, money can be a tool to make more money, and give them that idea. And the hope is that they'll pick with their parents maybe one or two of the ideas and go and try them. Kind of how we see in America, where they have the lemonade stand and these types of things. I want to empower young people to not think, I have to wait till I get a job. Actually, you could start making money right now.
All right. What about? Can you just tell our viewers a little bit about the different types of income? Obviously, earned income.
Yes.
Because you tend to find that there are advantages and disadvantages of different types of income that you earn. So, for instance, more advantageous in the UK to have a corporate structure.
Yes.
Because you can offset certain things against it, which you can't do as an employee. But some people have this, just got to be an employee and there's nothing else. Which again feeds into the idea of maybe some side hustles that people can do on the side, where they can have a corporate structure and have a more tax efficient overall plan. Yeah,
it's a great question. I always tell people, there are 365 days in a year. Why only get paid on 12 of them? Like, if you scored 12 out of 365, I know me, my mum, they'll ship you one straight back to Nigeria, to the village, not even to Lagos. You're going to the village, So actually, the point being is that there's an opportunity for you to make money every single day. I'm not saying that you're going to do it, but there are different ways that you can make money. And imagine your life if you made money on an extra 50 days. How much different would your life be? How much more beneficial would it be to have that additional income to help you do the things that you want to do? I'm not a believer in just cut. I'm like, if you want to live that life, think about what are the things I can do to give me the life I want to live. If you want to go on holiday 2 or 3 times a year, why are you trying to squeeze that from that one income? Actually create other income streams, create other things that you can do, and they can pay for the lifestyle that you want to live. And so it's really important to think about that. Like you said, side hustles are something that, for me, I think it's a mandatory. It's no longer. We've got people that are middle class that are using food banks. We've got people who have never had to struggle before, that are having to get support and help to pay their mortgage. That's where we're at in this country right now. For a lot of people, it's become very, very hard. And so what we need to do is look at how do we add value. Like, for me, I always tell people, when I wake up in the morning, I don't wake up thinking about I need to make more money. I feel like that is a dreadful way to live, like just thinking about making money. I wake up in the morning and I think, who can I help? Like, what skill do I have? what ability do I have? What skill, what value can I give to somebody? And if I can really help them, I'm sure they will pay me for the help that I can give to them. And so who can I help? And when you ask yourself that question, who can you help? It might be, knitting. You might be good at knitting, and you can knit stuff and sell that in your local community. I remember when I was young, we used to do car wash. We used to knock on our neighbours' doors and say, "Oh, we'll wash your car," and then wash their car, and they'll give us £5, or £2, whatever it may be, and we could start making money from these simple things. You don't have to be well skilled. I tell young people, the great thing about being young is that you tend to have a lot more energy. So if you have energy and time, you might be around older people that have money, but they don't have much energy and they don't have much time. So actually, you're a perfect partner to that person. So, whether it be deal sourcing is another thing that a lot of young people I'm around do, where they go and they find out, they go to property events, they learn what investors are looking for properties, and then they go and source those properties because they've got the time to do it, and they present it to the investors, and they're able to get paid off the back of it. We call it that middle person money. Like, you can be the in between. You don't have to be the person with them. You don't have to be the person with the product, or the service, nor do you have to be the person with the money. You just need to be able to connect the two, and you can get paid in between for doing so. Yeah. And that's the type of thing that we should be thinking about. Is if you haven't got necessarily a skill or something that you think you're really good at, how can you link people who want something and have money for it, and put them together, and you can make money from it.
What about the concept of starting small?
Yes.
Starting wherever you are. Whether it comes to investing, I've recently, as a result of this podcast, I've become exposed to people like yourselves and the concept of investing in stocks and shares, which was something that I never used to do because I was a property person. That's kind of when I think of investment, is property.
Yes.
But I've seen that property is not the only asset class which could work, and my aversion to stocks and shares was, you could just lose money, and you got no control over it. Whereas a property, I can see value and I know what to do to get the value out straight up, But having gone on this journey with stocks and shares now, I'm actually learning and seeing how it's working. Exactly. But I had to start small.
Yeah.
But some people kind of wanted to hit it big, but it doesn't work that way.
No, it doesn't work that way. And again, that's where social media and the pressures of, it looks like everybody's winning on social media because no one's posting their failures. Everyone's posting their wins. And even the wins, sometimes they're perceived wins. Like, just because I see somebody holding a pair of keys outside of a door doesn't mean they own the property. Just because I see someone inside of a nice car doesn't mean they own the car. But what happens is that it looks like our peers or everyone around us is doing well. And not only that, it's not just around us. Now you can see someone in Brazil, you can see someone in Africa, someone in China. You're competing with the whole world. Before it was just your friends, your local. You know what I mean? Now you're competing with the whole world. So it seems like nothing you're doing is enough. And so it's so important to start small. Like you said, I tell people, they say they don't want to invest. I'm like, have you got £1? Do you have £1? If you have £1, you can invest with a company like Moneybox, £1 a month into it. Guess what? Every 6 months, you're going to get the same report as somebody that's investing £1 million a month. The same report you're gonna get from the fund manager. You're gonna see the same percentage up or down. If it goes up by 10%, your £1 will go up by 10%. If it goes down by 10%, your £1 will go down by. So you're gonna learn. There's something that you get from experience. And I've had people that started with £1, then went to 5, then went to 10, and now they're putting £300-400 a month in, because actually once you've experienced it, you've learned it, and you see, oh wow, this year I made 8%. If I had 10k, that would have been 800. Do you know what I mean? All of a sudden, you start to feel like I know this works. I can do this. And so it's about starting where you're at and building. But also, I tell people it's about being intentional. Who's around you? Because like you said, when doing this podcast, you're around new people that gave you new ideas, and you trusted those people, and you said, well, I know you're not a fool, I know you're not crazy. If you're comfortable to do this, I now become comfortable to do this. And so I always tell people, you say you want to start investing, you say you want to start making money, What are the podcasts that you're listening to? When you're on YouTube, what are you filling your mind with? When you're on social media, what are you filling your mind with? When you're watching television, what are you filling your mind with? So again, it's really important that you're intentional, because if I want to start investing, if the podcasts I listen to, if I'm watching Bloomberg or watching the markets, all of a sudden these words start to make sense. If I don't like to read, I can listen to audiobooks. All of a sudden, my knowledge, I become so much more confident because I surrounded myself with that environment. And that's one of the best pieces of advice. Like, your best investment is investing in yourself.
Right. And what about the attribute of patience? We've just come to the end of this interview, but then, because when it comes to investing and building generational wealth, you need to have that attribute of patience. You can't sort of make the investment and expect to see an immediate return.
Yes.
And that seems to be sort of a stumbling block for some people even starting, because I mean, I work with people all the time, and I've seen that, especially young people, if they're not seeing a return after 3 months, 4 months, then it's not worth it. But then, as a financial advisor and as an investor, you've got to have a longer term view than that. Can you just tell our viewers a little bit about why they need to have patience?
I think patience is so key. And again, patience comes from having clear objectives. So when I sit down with my clients, when we're looking at investing, we are saying that you've got X amount of money, or you can afford to put X amount a month in. You've got X amount left over each month. Of that, what can we afford to put in and not need to touch for the next 5 to 10 years? It's about having that objective. The problem is that, like you said, most people, they'll start investing, but they invest in money they can't even afford to lose. And so because of that, actually what happens is you're putting money in, and then you need it. The only money you've got is the money in the market. And then if you need it at that time and the markets are down, now you've made a loss. Now in your mind, investing doesn't work and it's a scam. But the reality is that you never went in with clear objectives. If you had an emergency fund, then when that emergency happened, you take money from the emergency fund, you wouldn't need to touch your investment, so you could leave that over the longer term. Also, you need to have money for your short term, medium term, and long term. Like, actually, I always tell people the plan is not to work forever. The plan is not to work forever. But if you look at the way you manage your money, the way you manage your money says you're going to work forever. Because you don't have a pension, you don't have an ISA, you don't have a business. You literally go to work, you get paid, you use all that money to live your lifestyle today, and then you're back to zero before payday, then you get paid and you do it again. There's a difference between like working hard and distance. Some of us, we're literally on a roundabout. So when you look at your steps, it says you've done loads of steps, but you're just going around in circles. So you actually haven't gone anywhere. And that's how we're living our lives. We're making money, and at the end of the year, you get your P60, and it shows how much you're like, wow, did I make that much this year? But actually, you've got nothing to show for it, because you're literally living a cycle, in a circle, on a roundabout. And what we want to try and do is take you further, take you on a journey where your money's actually working for you further than your current surroundings. And so it's so important that you have the patience, but also the objectives. Like my clients, once they know their why, it's vital. Because if I know I want to buy a house, and that's my focus, if my friend now buys a car, I don't feel any jealousy or any animosity towards my friend, because I know I don't want a car, I want a house. But until you've identified what you're working towards and why you're working towards it, what will happen is every time, I've just made X money from this, now you want to jump on that. Or I've just started this new business, oh, now you want to start that. Oh, I'm getting into property, now you keep jumping. And so you never actually commit to anything. So it's so important to have patience, but patience comes from knowing your goals and knowing your why and what you're actually working towards.
Right. That's quite profound. You've got to know your why.
Yeah.
You've got to know your why. Great. We're just wrapping up. Final question. Alignment.
Yes.
Being aligned. Because I know obviously you're married and all that, and one of the things I've done in my research is that your wife is a very strong ally and somebody who's kind of supported you, especially in the low seasons of your life.
Yes.
How important is it for people who are watching this, who might be in relationships, to be intentional about their alignment with each other, especially when it comes to investing and financial goals?
For my wife, I always tell people, my wife is the difference between me watching the telly and me being on the telly. My wife, when we had the low seasons and things were hard, my wife told me, like, don't wait for, because I used to do talks at churches, like, don't wait for churches. Go on social media and build your own community. I was like, I don't even use social. I know at those times I didn't even use social media. I didn't even understand how it worked. She had a cake business, so she had quite a few followers, and so she got me my first radio interview because someone she did a cake for had a radio station, had a radio show. So she showed me how to use social media, and she supported. Even when I came back home, like I said, I came back home and said, look, they made me redundant. I would expect her to say, well, you have to go back and get another job. I said, I'm not going back. I said, I want to make a way, and I'm going to make this social media thing work. She didn't doubt. She believed. Having that one person in my life that I know is confident in me. Like, if my wife says that I can do it, I don't care what anyone else says. I believe it. I believe it. And that sometimes you need to have that faith. Like, obviously I believe in God and I have the faith in God. But that human element of having someone to know that when it's hard and I come home, I can cry, she'll wipe my tears, and then give me that pep talk. All right, babe, go out and do it again. You can do it. And that makes so much difference. And then also the discernment. My wife is very discerning in regards to people. Now that I'm on social media, everyone wants to be your friend. I saw a post the other day, and there was a guy sitting in a football stadium on his own, and in a football stadium being filled. And one says, when you need support is the one where he's in the stadium on his own. And then when you succeeded, the stadium's full. Yeah. Like, when you succeed, everybody wants to be your friend. When I was hustling and I was trying to just get a break and trying to get opportunity and trying to get people to give me it was dead. Nobody was there. Now that I'm on television and I'm on doing all this other stuff, I can't even not find a friend. Everywhere I go, there's a new person that wants to be your friend. And so having my wife to be discerning and say, look, man, I don't think that person has your best interests at heart, or actually not needing to go outside. Like, I can make new connections, but actually I always tell people I don't make a decision without running it past my wife. And that's not because she's my boss, it's because we are accountable to one another. And because we have that accountability, even I've spoke to big TV channels, and they're like, we want a decision. You have to wait, I have to speak to my wife. And they always respect it. They always say, no, that's fine, I totally understand. And it's because we are a team. It's not about I make this amount of money, she makes that amount of money. So no, we are a team. The decisions I make affect both of us. And so we've got to make them together. And having that accountability makes all the difference.
Fantastic. What do you think about this podcast and what you're trying to do?
I think it's so needed. Because there are so many podcasts and I get it for entertainment, for light relief. But what this podcast for me is showing that you don't have to be a genius. You don't have to have a silver spoon in your mouth. You don't have to have all this everything stacked up for you to win. And I think when people start to really realize and understand that then we'll start to see a lot more of us having ownership. And it's about seeing representation from people that look like you, sound like you. Because that Nelson Mandela saying, it always seems impossible till it's done. Like, people thought it was impossible for someone to come from where I come from, sound like I sound, and be on national TV as the expert. But today, it's the norm. And so what we're saying is that podcasts like this and us sharing our voices and our experience gives the next generation and people that may be out there struggling hope. And hope is something that we are very good at having, but not very good at executing. And having a podcast, you can see a 30-second clip on Instagram, but having 1 hour listen to someone break down how to do it is much more better.
Right. We have a tradition on this podcast where we give our guests the opportunity to dedicate their episodes that they feature on to anyone or any group of people of their choices. So who would you like to dedicate this episode to? And you can look to the camera for that. I dedicate this episode to my wife, Miriam. She's been a wonderful support. She's helped me through the hard times, and now we've got the good times and we're enjoying together. So, I just dedicate it to her, and I thank her, love her, and appreciate her for all the support. Fantastic. If you've enjoyed this podcast, as I'm sure you have, please like, comment, share, and subscribe. And Emmanuel, thank you very much for making this happen. And I wish you all the very best with the new book coming out and all your up and coming projects. And see you guys next week.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.